Daily edition coming to you after practice last night at Beaver Stadium. A big night for Penn State football. We are getting a clear picture about the depth chart and what you should expect heading into the final week of training camp and the first week of the regular season against Wisconsin next week. I'm Thomas Frank Carr, your host of the BWI Daily Edition. Senior editor Nate Bauer was at practice with me last night. We're going to talk about that today, some observations, some things that we've been looking at over time at training camp. But the first thing, Nate, you were talking to Jaquan Brisker after practice, and he said something that was awesome for us when we want to bring up something interesting to talk about. What did he say to you after you asked him about the quarterback at Penn State?
Yeah, I hope I don't mess up the exact wording, and I know that you've got the clip ready so that I don't mess it up. But I just asked him first. I asked him about how much opportunity they get to go ones versus ones, right, during preseason, because that's an important part of this. Is during the season they don't all that much, but in the preseason they do get a good number of reps, ones versus ones, twos versus twos. And so I asked him that, and he said, "Yeah, we get some." And I said, "Okay, well, specifically, what have you thought of Sean Clifford?" And he said, I'm paraphrasing, I think Sean Clifford is going to be the best quarterback in college football this season.
Let's hear it. Let's hear because
look at your eyes.
He didn't really stop there either. He doubled down on this.
What have you thought? I mean, specifically Sean Clifford. How do you feel like he's performed so far this preseason?
I feel like Sean Clifford is going to be the best quarterback in all of college football. Just the way he prepared. He's the first one in, last one out, and he takes his job very seriously. And especially we got a chip on the shoulder this year, so he definitely came out with a chip on the shoulder this camp, and I feel like you guys are going to see what he does this year.
Do you guys gravitate towards that?
Yes, especially during the summer. We had a couple extra reps, and Sean stepped up and talked to the team and was like, "Let's go, it's time." So it definitely we feed off that just because that's one of our leaders, and that's our quarterback.
All right, thank you guys. Thanks so much.
So obviously has his teammates back, and Sean Clifford has been in some preseason awards watch lists, which means he plays and he's a starter at quarterback position in a lot of ways. But is there some truth to a hidden gem with a breakout season ready for Sean Clifford, or what do you make of all of that?
I think that he has a chance.
That was a really pregnant pause, by the way.
Well, look, like I think, I do think that this is the case. I think that you've seen in the past some skill. I don't know if average is the right word. It's not the right word, right? Like you got to be good to play the position no matter what, right? Like there's, I'm not going to set this low bar as, just anybody can walk out there, and if they're surrounded by a ton of talent, they can be a Heisman winner. That's not the case. But does he have the opportunity with Mike Yurcich and with the pieces that exist on this Penn State offense to have some pretty big numbers this season and some pretty good success and limit his turnovers, or if he limits his turnovers? Yeah, absolutely. I don't think there's any question about that those elements could be there for him to have that type of a season. At the end of the year, is it going to make us all say, "Oh, well, we totally had it wrong"? No, I don't think so. I think we'll all say, "Oh, he is who he is." We saw elements of this in 2019. They weren't there for him to have that success in 2020. That's not to say that he didn't make his share of mistakes. He did. He made a ton of mistakes. But the guy who was a Rivals, he wasn't a 5-star, but he was a 4-star at the 5-star challenge. He was Elite 11, right? Like this is one of the better quarterbacks in the country for his recruiting class, and has had some success. Major step back last year, but the opportunity will be there for him to have some pretty solid success this year as well.
Yeah, and that's where I think it's the most reasonable to come down on the what is Sean Clifford scale, because I agree. Whenever people ask me this question, I will not rule out the idea that he can be a good quarterback in 2021. It's just about so many different things and the picture being so cloudy for us because of what happened last year. One of the things that Brenton Strange said to me last night when we were talking to him after practice was, again, guys, you're asking about who's stepping up, who's showing well at certain positions, and he mentioned Keandre Lambert-Smith as a guy who's elevated his game, has taken a big step forward in 2021 during training camp. That is a huge factor. We've talked about it time and time again, about a guy that they need somebody at that receiver position outside the top two to really take a step forward. One thing I've noticed is that Keandre Lambert-Smith has been at the front of the line when we've been watching drills. He has been one of the guys that has been, the proverbial first off the bus when it comes to certain positions and drills. He is, it seems like, taking that step forward. One position that is still cloudy after yesterday, and James Franklin did not make it any clearer, was the interior of the offensive line. What did you observe? Because we were over with the offensive line and Phil Troutwine for a little bit today. What did you observe there, and what is your opinion of that interior position?
Yeah, so it was Anthony Wiggin last night, and I didn't see Salim Wormley. So that doesn't mean he's hurt, but I just didn't see him. He didn't rep while we were there, and I didn't see him, around. So
right.
Again, we're there for 20 minutes. These guys are often in and out, so you don't want to make too much of that, and you don't want to read into that too much. But a guy who seemed to have some buzz and seemed to be projecting to be very, very much involved at that left guard spot, potentially as the starter, just wasn't there last night.
Yeah,
so,
yeah, and it's our last view before the first week of the season. This is the last week of training camp. This is when we're seeing a real differentiation, even in the warm-ups, between who are the two deep and who are the guys that are starting on the practice squad, or guys that are. We're seeing a little bit of that when it comes to the differentiation, and not having them out there. That does muddy that picture. But James Franklin said after practice last night, and if you want to check out his full comments, we have it up on our YouTube page, Blue White Illustrated on YouTube. Make sure you give us a follow so you don't miss anything like that. Some pretty important information. He said, hit like. Yes, thank you. Hit like and hit the notification button. He said they've got 4 guys in that rotation. And this is when you get to 4, that to me says that you don't have anything. Like when you have 2 quarterbacks or you have 3 quarterbacks, you don't have any quarterbacks. If you don't have 2, if we haven't narrowed this down at all from the 4 that we started with heading into the Wisconsin season, I do worry about a weak link sort of situation where you're still searching for answers, and if there's one area you don't want to be weak, like have a true weakness, it would be against the defensive line at Wisconsin. Are you concerned about that after last night, or is it more of they still have time and they can fix that if they need to?
I think that there are definitely some questions. I think there are definitely some questions, right? I mean, even just the sense that Anthony Wiggin, got again, like it's so limited what we can see. But Anthony Wiggin had a problem with Derek Tangelo last night in the one-on-ones that we saw, right? Like there are problems there when it again, it's just a look thing, but when it looks the way that it does, and then the guy that you think is potentially there as a starter isn't, like I don't really know about 4. Like 4 seems to be more than I'm anticipating to really be a factor there. Like, is Eric Wilson really going to be considered as a starter there? I have not seen the evidence of that. And so to me, it seems to be a Wormley Wiggin deal right now. It's just a matter of, who is there all the time, who is ready to fulfill that role. And what I can say is, this is the 4th or 5th preseason practice that we've been to. And I would say that I don't think it's been the same necessarily from one practice to the next, right? Like
Yeah.
the
Yep.
the first one was Wiggin. Wormley was at right guard, second team. Then he is the starter the next week, and then it's back to Wiggin. So that just appears to be a situation that I do think Phil Troutwine is insistent that he's going to play a depth and a rotation of players, as many as he feels confident can play.
Yeah.
And I would extend it beyond that. It's not just who he feels confident can play. It's if he doesn't feel confident, then you gotta work it until you get a guy who you do feel confident with.
Yeah.
And that seems to be the direction that they're going.
And that's one position where there's never really been a hard line between starter and primary backup under James Franklin. And I would assume that's the case with Phil Troutwine as far as, wanting, and he's talked about multiple times, wanting to get the 5 best guys out there. I don't care what position they play necessarily, as long as we find the right position for everybody. But I don't believe that philosophy of getting everyone reps so they're ready to go in the future is going to just go away with James Franklin. But yeah, not having a consistent anything at that position is super interesting. It's the BWI Daily Edition. I'm your host, Thomas Frank Carr. Breakfast time at the Nate Bauer household. What are we eating for breakfast this morning?
I'm not having anything. My wife is having some Trader Joe's oatmeal. And a friend of hers is visiting. I don't know what she's going to have.
I thought I heard bacon. Maybe I'm just hungry, but I thought I heard bacon.
Now there's some toast involved. There's some Ezekiel bread raisin toast. Don't know if you've had it, but
I haven't. No. Is it good? What is Ezekiel bread? That sounds like it's very old timey. Is that good?
It's you know what? They're like sprouted grains, and so it's. My mom doesn't like it. She says it's a little dense for her. It's like the consistency.
Well, if that's dense, she really won't like me then.
And honestly, I don't think she cares for me all that much either. It's just...
Well, you and I are having a fresh pot of game day today here on the Daily Edition.
I'm a mess. I got sparkling water here.
Does it have any sparkle left in it at this point? It doesn't look very sparkly.
It's not very sparkly. It was in the refrigerator last night. You cannot open these things.
No, it's a one-setting thing.
Them. I'm glad that you understand me. I feel very connected to you right now.
Oh, yeah. Like, I love those sparkling waters, but I buy them in, like, the small cans or stuff like that because if you don't get them in one setting, they just become really flat water. It's not even – they don't turn into just regular water. It somehow becomes worse. And I can't do it. We'll get back to some football here for a second because that's I'm a slow processor when it comes to this stuff. So we watch camp. We talk to the players, we talk to the coaches, and then I kind of need time to digest and ruminate on what I saw. And it really came into focus over the last couple of weeks looking at a couple of players. So doing a little bit of the looks like here, is there anyone that stood out to you that looks like X? Bigger, stronger, smaller, anything like that you've seen at training camp so far?
Yeah, I would just say I spent some time with the offensive line last night, and Landon Tengwall, the true freshman and the early enrollee, is going to be a factor.
Yeah,
I think that much is clear. He was at right tackle, second team last night. There was another position that was interesting to me just because we've seen him and I knew that it was a possibility for him, but we've seen him previously at guard and tackle. Well, Bryce Effner was the second string center last night. So, you're starting to see the signs and the evidence of players who are going to play. They're going to be part of the conversation this season. And so those are two guys specifically to me that, we're going to be able to see and count on seeing those two guys as being part of Penn State's rotation there on the offensive line.
Yeah. Yeah, one guy that I've been kind of taking a look at over the last couple of weeks, we've brought him up here, and you've said Ellis Brooks, it's not going the way you would hope at that middle linebacker position. And I was kind of curious as to what has been going on with him. He's listed now at over 240 pounds. He looks it, and I'm not sure I'm in love with it. Every time I watch him move, like what he was he was really quick. Now, he's never been fast. So you're not sacrificing any speed with Ellis Brooks, but he was a quick player. He was able to make moves to get into position. I'm a little concerned about that factor because I think he's put on some weight. And again, it's not bad weight, but sometimes you just can't handle moving at a larger size. That's the thing is like, are you able to move at that bigger weight? And I'm a little bit concerned about that particular situation. On the flip side, Caden Wallace looks awesome. He is just sculpted and huge. Penn State is going to have a really good tackle tandem at that offensive line position. So those are just some of my observations about guys and what I've seen at training camp, because it's those are the things we can, I think, come away with when it comes to what we get to see is moves like, looks like. I really like what I've seen from Keziah Holmes as well. I think he looks super quick. I think he looks really good. So that's another situation where there's going to be a ton of depth there. We haven't even asked about the running back position in a couple of weeks now because I think everyone's just like, it's set. It doesn't matter what it is, but it's set.
It's Noah Kane. It's Noah Kane, and then we'll see.
Yeah, but that brings up something that has also come up a couple of times with the offensive scheme in general. And I asked Brenton Strange last night, what is the temperament of this offense? Would you say it's an aggressive offense? Because that's kind of the vibe we've gotten from Mike Yurcich. And he said yes, but once again, they bring up, you got to be able to run the football. You've got to be able to establish the run. Those are things I wasn't expecting of Mike Yurcich, Big 12 offense. We're going to lead with the run. Is that a mentality thing? Or is that actually going to be a run-first offense?
No, I think I don't know if run first is the way to put it, but I think run established as the gateway to passing success is very, very firmly entrenched. Like, I don't think that there's any question about that. I actually, during an offseason interview that I had with him, I asked him about the running game, and just because we're all in love, right? Like, we all see the passing game, and it's like, it's a video game,
right?
Well, he said that he's never had a successful offense that didn't have a running back who was very, very strong. Right?
Yeah.
Like they have never had the type of success as an offense without having that element as being a crucial complement to what they do. And so I don't think that there's any question that they expect to have to and to be able to run the football. I mean, I think that's I would not be surprised by that. So when they yes, the confusion, the tempo, all of the things that they're trying to do offensively in the passing game, they can't do that if defenses don't respect what they are doing in the running game.
But that's a system, right? So I do find that interesting, kind of bringing all this stuff together and all of our off-season study of Mike Yurcich's. I always noticed that there's a lot of outside zones. I know it's all playing off one another, and that's an actual system. That's an offensive scheme. That's not necessarily we do X, Y, and Z. It's we do this because we want this. We do this so that this happens later, and we put these guys in conflict because they have to be aware of this. And I guess what has been interesting to me is, you're right, focusing on the passing game in Sean Clifford, and the ultimate success of the offense lies there. But I guess I'm just hoping from an analytical standpoint, from a football metric standpoint, that the mentality and the ability to run the ball are emphasized, but not necessarily that you have to run the football to set up everything else. Just that the systems and the parts should work off one another, not necessarily you have to run the ball to be able to throw, because that is not necessarily true. And that's not something that I think even in college football, you can disprove that fairly easily just by looking at offenses in general.
Yeah, I mean, I think that is true, but I also think that okay, maybe you don't have to do one to be able to do the other well, but for the offense to reach its full potential, I mean, I'm not saying anything that's like rocket science here, but if you want to be the best offense that you can be, you're going to have that element. It has to be included, and it has to be not just included. To me, I think from all indications of what they've said this offseason, it has to be a significant piece of that. Right? Like that is the gateway to putting up the number, to scoring the amount of points that you want to score, because that's it. He's pretty forthcoming and upright, or forthright about what this is about, and it's doesn't matter how many yards. Doesn't matter how many yards you have. It doesn't matter who the leading receiver is, the quarterback, the running back. How many points can you score in a game, and is it enough to beat your opponent? And they're going to try to score a ton of points. We'll see if they can. But that's it.
And that leads me right back to who's the explosive running back that's going to get those big plays and those touchdowns. But we've been
Isaiah Holmes.
We've been on this feedback loop now for 4 weeks. I'm so excited that we have actual game stuff to talk about next week. Couple last things to wrap up here. Your article, your notebook from last night, all your observations, unfiltered, bwi.rivals.com if you want that. And if you are not a subscriber, use the promo code BWI60. I'll put it up here for you so that you can see it. BWI60 is the promo code to get 2 months free, so you can get the inside information from practice, because we're going to be able to see practice throughout the season, and those observations always go up from Nate in his notebook on the day, the night. If it's the middle of the night, he always gets it up. So if you want to get those first, bwi.rivals.com/subscribe. Any other notes that you want to bring up? I want to ask before that, though, anything that James Franklin said yesterday afterwards that caught your ear and that was interesting to you that we haven't covered yet?
That's a great question. Personnel-wise, I don't think so. We know who James is at this point, right? And so 2 weeks before the start of the season, he doesn't want to give anything away, anything. And so, there's a protocol to naming a backup quarterback, and he didn't want to divulge that information until he had those conversations with players. But then he extended the concept to every position battle, right? Anything that was up for grabs, because they haven't had, and like, you can respect it. It's not a problem. Because they hadn't had the conversations with the players yet, then, he didn't want to divulge that information, to the media. I do think one note that was apparent to me, and typically holds true this time of year, is they were in game prep last night.
Yeah. Yep.
So as of Wednesday, I don't know if that was the first time, but and you saw this based on the numbers, that's always the telltale sign, is players are separated, right? You've got your first, your second, your third team, and then you've got scout, and the scout guys are in those alternate, Wisconsin numbers, essentially trying to duplicate or show looks. So like, camp is technically over. Penn State football is now in game week. And then the other thing that I would note, and this is more up my alley probably than yours, or maybe anybody who's listening, but when he was asked about the ACC, Big Ten, Pac-12 alliance, the only thing that you need to do is, and I would advise anybody who's relatively interested, is to go watch his reaction, because what he said was, it wouldn't be right, it wouldn't be respectful to comment on something that I don't really know anything about, right? That we haven't had these conversations about. But there's a very unsubtle subtext to that. Hey, By the way, I don't want to put words into his mouth, but I'm going to. Yeah, we weren't included in this process and have not had a seat at the table, and this is something that was done outside of our purview. So, doesn't really matter what he thinks right now.
Also, can I also add some words in there for James? Can we just make this a co-authored piece?
Go the whole way, buddy. I want it.
What does it even mean? Like, that's the other half of like, what is it? It's not a document. There is absolutely nothing concrete about it. So it's like a gentleman's agreement between 41 programs that we promise. We even got the promise ring on. We put the promise ring on. We're not going to cheat on you in college. Are you kidding me? Like, these universities will literally do anything to crawl to the top of this pyramid. And now you've got 3 separate entities that include 41 separate other entities inside of them. You can't get the Big Ten to be in lockstep at all times, let alone the ACC with Miami and with Louisville. Come on.
As long as we're talking about adolescence and childhood, indiscretion, it's literally like your parents talking to you about being mature, right? Like, these are some things that you can do. You can be a person who has a clean room, right? Like, you can clean your room. And the Big Ten, the ACC, and the Pac-12 heard that, right? Like, oh, this is what the SEC is doing. I want to be like that. And they took everything on the floor in their room and shoved it directly under their beds. Right. And so on the one hand, you've created the appearance of, oh, I'm mature. I'm cleaning my room. I've got a clean room. You don't have a clean room.
Oh, my God.
It's all just under the bed. It's all just under the bed.
We'll have to see how that one develops. But most excitingly, as you just said, we're in game week, Wisconsin coming up next week. So make sure you stay tuned to the BWI Daily Edition. We'll be providing you information and interviews coming up the next week about Wisconsin. Get you some game prep because it's here. Nate Bauer, senior editor, Blue White Illustrated. He's here with us on the BWI Daily Edition. As always, thanks for your insight, Nate.
Anytime, thank me, thank my son, 6 months old. He wants to make his presence known, too. He's excited.
I hate sharing the camera with someone cuter than me, and that's why all of this has been a problem, Nate. Deep down, like you, your son, I need to stop being upstaged, okay?
I'll back off. My bad.
Subscribe wherever you get your podcasts and to YouTube. It's the BWI Daily Edition. I'm your host, Thomas Frank Carr. We will talk to you tomorrow.